So if you've ever gotten the opportunity to buy a new machine, whether it be an ATV or a UTV like this, you probably have gotten surveys in your email, or maybe even surveys in your regular mail. You know, these manufacturers who are building these fun machines, obviously market research is critically important to them. I mean, if you're building machines specifically for the purpose of people to take out and have fun, then you kind of need to know what people want in something like that, right? I would argue that market research is even more important for these places than it is for car manufacturers. So anyway, they send out a lot of surveys, and most people probably delete it. You know, you get some of that stuff in the mail, you throw it in the trash, or you see it in your email, you hit delete. But I like to take the time to fill out the surveys for the reason that I just told you. You know, if we don't speak up and tell these companies what we like, then how do they know what to build, right? So anyway, you know, I get surveys now from Kawasaki because I bought this new Teryx, and, you know, I've gotten 2 or 3 of them, and I usually take the time to fill them out. Well, today I was doing a survey from Kawasaki, and most of it was your typical stuff, asking about, you know, your favorite aspects of the machine, your least favorite aspects of the machine, that kind of thing. But the last 3 questions I thought were really interesting, because at the end of the survey, those last 3 questions dealt with electric and hybrid utility vehicles. So I've got a screenshot that I got of the first one, and you can see here, they were basically asking my opinion of electric or hybrid machines like this. You know, basically trying to figure out, you know, would you buy one? What is your interest level in something like this? So anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. The second question after this one asked, what is the minimum number of miles of range that you would consider to be acceptable for an electric utility vehicle? You know, so if they built something like this right here, fully electric, how many miles of range would it have to have minimum to be considered acceptable? Well, I said about 100 miles. And the reason I went with 100 miles is because that's about what this one will do. If I fill the gas tank all the way up, this one will go about 100 miles. So I figured that if you're going to change the propulsion system completely and go with electric, then it has to at least match what the gasoline version would do. Honestly, it should be better, but it has to at least match, right? So that's why I went with 100 miles. Obviously, the more the better, but we have to be realistic here. And then, you know, there was a third question after that that was talking about, basically, again, it was just another way of phrasing it, but again, you know, interest level in an electric utility vehicle or a hybrid version. They asked about both. So anyway, the point is, that's pretty interesting that they were asking those questions. Obviously, you can't draw the conclusion that Kawasaki is building an electric utility vehicle right now from the fact that they asked those questions. But I mean, honestly, you know, why would they even bother to ask those questions in a survey unless they were at least considering it? You know, it's almost a guarantee that Kawasaki is having internal conversations about this, thinking about, you know, these electric machines that could be coming down the pike in the future. And like I said, they even talked about hybrid machines where you would have both propulsion systems on board. So anyway, I just thought that was really interesting. Now, you know, if we want to talk about that, you know, if they built an electric utility vehicle, it's not like it would be an earth-shattering thing. I mean, those already exist. You know, just a few months ago, I was up at the dealership in Lexington, Kentucky, and they had the Polaris version. You know, Polaris has already got some Rangers out there that are electric. So they already exist. It wouldn't be something brand new. But, you know, the fact that Kawasaki, and I'm sure there's other companies too, you know, looking into this, maybe to build their own, is kind of interesting. How would they market that? You know, how would they get people to look at an electric version of this over the current gasoline version? Well, I mean, the benefits are the torque. You know, electric motors make a lot of torque right off idle. They don't really have an idle, so to speak, I guess, if you want to get technical about it. An electric motor is either on or off, basically. It's making the torque or it's not. So anyway, that's perfect for off-road machines like this, because if you're crawling around in the rocks or technical terrain or whatever, having that, you know, huge amount of torque right there when you want it That'd be pretty awesome. So that would be a big advantage. It would be quiet, much more quiet than something like this. And a lot of people like to have quiet machines when they're out in the woods, out in the wilderness. You know, a lot of the people that enjoy the great outdoors also enjoy peace and quiet. So I guess that would be an advantage. And I guess in theory, it could be an advantage in terms of maintenance and reliability, because an electric version of this would have far fewer parts, far less maintenance, you know, and upkeep. I mean, I just ordered, this one's ready for its first service, so I just ordered $100 worth of fluids to do a service on this thing later this week. I got to do fluid in the front differential, the rear transaxle, the engine oil, the filters. I got to check the coolant and all that stuff. Well, if this was an electric machine, I wouldn't have to do any of that, right? So, you know, that would be an advantage to an electric machine also. There's definitely some benefits to electric, okay? You can't take that away from them. There's some benefits to it. But there's also some drawbacks. It would be expensive, number one. Number two, it would be heavy. You know, battery packs are very heavy. And when you're talking about fun machines, whether it be a UTV or a sports car or whatever the case might be, if you're building something to be nimble and agile and quick and fun, weight is not what you want. You know, you want to shed as much weight as you can. So adding batteries to something like this, that's a drawback. Like we just talked about a minute ago, range, and we'll tag on to that with how long does it take to charge, you know? That's critically important. I can fill this machine up in 5 minutes and ride 100 miles. You would have to be able to charge up an electric machine like this in a very quick time and then go at least 100 miles to make it even something I would consider. You know, because again, if you're going to completely revamp something like this and change it from the ground up, then it needs to get better. It can't be worse. And it really shouldn't be just the same either. You know, if you're going to completely change the game, then it needs to be better. So anyway, there's drawbacks there. There's benefits, and there's things that are not going to be benefits. You know, I guess it's that way with everything in the world. But I guess the point of the video is it's just interesting to see that there are other companies, particularly Kawasaki, who are looking at making electric and hybrid versions of these things. So, you know, we know for years the EPA has been really hammering on the small engine market. That's one of the reasons why you don't see hardly any sport quads like this anymore. You don't see two-stroke engines hardly at all anymore. They've really started to dial back those. It's just harder and harder to sell things like that. They've been after lawn mowers in some states. That's why you're starting to see electric push mowers and riding mowers. You know, the EPA has really gone after the small engines out there. And so I'm sure that these ATV and UTV manufacturers have a little bit of heat on them. And they're trying to think of ways, okay, well, how can we see ourselves building these things into the future, you know? And I'm not saying I agree with it, don't get me wrong, but I think the electricity is going to end up in more of these things over these next 5 years or so. So keep your eye out for that. It's going to be interesting to see what they come up with next. You know, this machine, when I bought it, I told you, this machine right here, as you see it, has been on the market for a long time. I mean, they've been selling these things just like this for a decade now. So you know that Kawasaki's got to be wanting to update their product line. And if you're going to put out an electric machine like this, what better time to do it than now, right? Let us know what you guys think about this. This could be a really interesting topic to talk about. So post some comments below and let us know what you think about that. Would you buy something like this if it was electric or hybrid? Would you be remotely interested in one? I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you later.